So we're here at my local Walmart. We're going to be going in and looking at some consumer grade router and get it ready to be deployed in a production network for a small office, home office to a small business. So if this sounds fun, let's go ahead and go in and see what we can get.
Oh, it's Blackburn and tech, we're leveling up. From networking paths to systems we trust. Let's break it down, let's build it back. Together we're learning, right on track.
They only have a few options, but knowing what to look for is probably one of the most important things. Obviously stick within your price point, but you're looking for something that can serve your needs. So do you use wireless? Do you need the high-speed wireless? What's the maximum speed that it can support? How many clients can it support? So if we could pop over, we'll take a look at a couple of these routers, then we can see that they support different Wi-Fi standards. Like Wi-Fi 6 is currently the current standard. And then you want to look at what the speeds and the support is that it has. Like this one has advanced security with WPA3. If that's important to you, then obviously we want to go for the best bang for our buck. And then some of it is just a little bit overwhelming, but like dual band home Wi-Fi, for example. So if you look at it, it can go up to 1200 megabits per second. Just remember that's the maximum that this one could support. So if we look over down at some of these other ones they have, they can support different things. And then different product vendors, such as this one right here. This is a Nighthawk. Those are pretty known throughout the IT organizations for being a pretty decent router as well. You'll also see some of these, so where they're the dual band router and modem. So these ones are just like what your ISP gives you. Essentially, this will plug in your cable line directly into the back of it. And you can still configure it, but you have a little more control over it because it's your device. I think we're going to go with one of these other routers over here and try and build it out and see what we can get going.
Alright, so welcome to the Netgear firewall. I went and plugged it in and waited for my computer to give me an IP address, and it gave me a 1, which is a 192.168.1.2, and I happen to have the .1 as the gateway by default. So I'll go ahead and click on this. Say I'm not going to use their app. I'll agree to their terms. I don't know what it is, but I'll agree to it. You should probably read that. Alright, Netgear Nighthawk, it's a server device. Welcome, thank you. Checking for internet. I don't currently have it online, so I'll do that setup later. I'll click no on that one, and we'll set that one up later. Let's go ahead and create ourselves an account. I do like on how they prompt you for a password instead of just giving you a default one that some people don't change, and that sometimes is a problem. They do have a pretty strict policy on that too. Alright, so in a basic config, whenever I'm building out a new one, I always like to update the firmware. and tested out the newer one. If there's any issues, I'll revert back, and that's what I had to do because the newest version of firmware it was having some issues with, but being slightly behind is not terrible. That's one of the big advantages of having your own ISP managing the firmware for you is that they know the device, they know what it's going to do, what's not going to do. But let's go ahead and start setting up our actual network. So we'll come over here, internet, and this is where we'll come in and go. If you have a one with a login, so like a PPPoE or a connection like that, this name is what your upstream device want to see it as. So like your ISP. For my environment, most environments for residential, it's get a dynamically assigned IP address from your ISP. That should be passed to you. It's what's known as DHCP. If you have a static, go ahead and click that and fill in the information they give you. As you can see, the IP address, subnet mask, and gateway. And then down here is the DNS servers. This is what DNS servers do you want to use to reach out on the internet. So one of the most common ones you'll see people do is 1.1.1.1, which is Cloudflare, or 8.8.8.8, which is Google's. And then this is if you needed to customize your MAC address or impersonate another MAC address. In order to save this, we'll just come over here in the corner and click apply. It should be updating the settings. I'm going to pause the video so you don't have to sit here and watch this little bar go across. Okay, so that's done. So then we'll come over here to the LAN settings. And this is what is known as your LAN, which is your network that your devices are on, such as like the computer I'm on right now. And this is where those devices' IP addresses is. By default, it's the 192.168.1.1 network, for example. And I'm personally not a huge fan of that network. It's one of the most common ones, like the .0 and the .1. So I would normally change mine to like .100 or something like that. So if we did this to .100, and then what do we want our router to be? Oops, good thing I double checked. So let's just set that to 100.1. So this would be the gateway address. So if you're setting something up on your network and whatever you set up here, this would be your network address. Coming down here, this is the DHCP server that's turned on by default. If you wanted to change it, so like .2 to 254 is the addresses that it's allowed to hand out. And this is a RIP version, that's for some routing protocols. We're not going to really worry about that on this video. And then down here at the bottom is what's known as DHCP reservations. So say I had an IP or a MAC address that I always want to get the same IP address, but I wanted to reach out through the DHCP server and get that address. I don't want to set it statically. This is how we can do that here. But one of the most important things people worry about is their wireless. So we'll come up here and click on wireless setup. And then we'll scroll down. As you can see, it's Netgear AR10. I personally recommend to have people change it to anything but what your device is. You don't want someone to be able to look at it and go, okay, well, that's a Netgear device, so maybe it has a default login, or maybe I know what security updates it's having an issue with. And then down here is what type of password encryption do you want to use. The most common still is AES right here, WPA2, but this device does support WPA3. If you have newer devices, then typically you could probably upgrade that. And it has a default password by default, and you can change it. I do like where it has this little thing where you can look at it, because there's so many times that you change it and you don't remember what you changed it to. And then the same thing applies to the 5 gigahertz band. You'll have your name, and what channels, what encryption, and what password. So you could have a different connection for it. So maybe you want 5 gigahertz to be more for the adults and 2.4 for everything else or whatever. Most of the time, you'll also set up what is known as a guest network. This allows for your guests to connect in and not be able to access your internal network. That's where this box right here comes in handy. So right here, like I said, same rule applies. Netgear guest, you don't want it to be that. You would set it as something guest, or so it's a unique name, so that way. And then the encryption right now, there's no password on it. Typically you want to have that way. And as you can see, enable SSID broadcast, but this box right here, enable guest network, is turned off. You would want to turn that on if you want to allow. And then allow guests to see each other and access my local network. That's typically not recommended, because then they would have access to your local network and be able to communicate with your devices. The whole reason typically for setting up a guest network is for it to be an isolated internet connection. So with this configuration right now, this would be a good base configuration to set up. If we want to go into more advanced configurations, go ahead and drop a comment and say you would like to see some more advanced configurations. Be happy to do that. I just want to go ahead and get the basic configuration, and with what we have right now, this would be a good basic configuration.
Okay, for this demonstration, I'll be using some Charter Spectrum equipment. So this right here is your modem. It's the device that they give you typically. And this plugs in through your cable line and then up. If we look at the back of this, this has just the power connection to it. This right here is the line that runs to your router that they give you, or you can plug in yours to it. And then this is right here is what actually comes in from their perspective. So your internet connections comes into here, gets translated down into here, then out to your router itself. So what this box essentially is doing is it's taking your public IP address and it's doing a media conversion, taking it into here and converting it so that way you can use it as an Ethernet connection. Okay, so the connection from the computer is right here, this blue cable. This is what my computer is plugged into currently. And this bright yellow port, this is where the modem will plug in. So there's an Ethernet port on the back of the modem, and it will plug in into here. And this is how we'll get the public IP address, because the modem's just going to translate it over into Ethernet for us and make it easier to get to. And then it comes over and into here. And then this device is what's actually going to get the public IP address itself. These other ports on here are just a switch. So this is the same as all of these other ones. There's some more advanced configuration on this one you can do. I didn't set it up, but there's some more advanced configuration, and this is so you can do some more storage. And then obviously your power cable is right here, and then your antennas for your wireless. All right, and with that, that's how you set up a home router and get it online for your own environment. If you found this informative, if you wouldn't mind, click a thumbs up, or if you didn't, give a thumbs down and please tell me why. If you did like this content, if you wouldn't mind, please consider subscribing. It definitely helps the channel and helps go a little further so we can provide great content like this for you. Thanks.